Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I am joined with a special guest, Sunny of Sunny Starlight, who is here, and we're here to talk about the classic film Madhumati, starring Dilip Kumar, who just passed away this week at the age of 98. Thank you, Sunny, for joining me on this because you're such an expert on the history of Bollywood, and there's no one better for me to talk to about a classic film like this. I loved it when you messaged me. I was seeing all of the tweets and all of the pictures and all the articles. Even the New York Times posted an article about here are the three movies of Dilip Kumar that you should see if you want to see who this great actor was that just passed away, this icon of Hindi cinema. And of course, Madhumati was one of the films that they chose to highlight. And I thought that was pretty incredible. But, friends of mine who know nothing about Hindi cinema or Bollywood were asking me, who is this guy that just died? Because the news was reaching all sorts of outlets everywhere. And, he was a giant of Hindi cinema, and I had seen his Mughal Azam, so I'd seen one of his films, but I hadn't, I mean, that one, like in my memory, what really sticks up is Madhubala's like amazing luminous performance and the dances and the music of that film. I mean, of course, Dilip Kumar is great, but I saw two of his films, and we're going to talk about Madhumati. I saw two of his films back to back, both that came out in 1958. This film and Yehudi, which we're going to talk about later. But anyway, so this film, I was messaging you while I was watching, and I'm like, this is so amazing. It's just so good. And I fell so hard for Dilip Kumar. And there's just so many things about this film that are extraordinary. The cinematography, the story, the acting. I mean, I was just blown away by so many different elements that all came together to make such a magical classic film. And this director actor combination, I can see that they've worked together many times. And looking up, in fact, the two films that I watched back to back this weekend were both directed by Bimal Roy. And it just I just was, just like one particular scene to highlight when he walks into the sort of haunted house, and he has that feeling of deja vu, that feeling of past life. And there's all of these images that flicker and whatever that are showing us, the audience, that all of this is going through his mind. But it's an extended scene. And he's just, staring off into space, but yet you're totally believing he's going through all of this. Like that that is just great acting to like totally take us inside how he's feeling in that moment when there's no words, there's just, and he doesn't even know what images or whatever they're going to be showing us, right? And he's just acting this scene. Oh my gosh, I mean, that's just one example of how I was just so blown away by his, not just his performance, but I'm just highlighting particularly that particular scene was one that really stuck with me. So I fell really hard. Be Still My Heart. I'm a huge fan of Dilip Kumar right after his passing, but this is the time to really honor him and celebrate what an amazing career and life that he did have.
Well, okay, so let's talk about the man himself first. I think you've come to him a little too late, and you've developed this huge crush on him, which I think, women from a certain age, from the time when he entered films, have had this crush on him. In fact, his wife, who's much, much younger than him, developed a crush on him at the age of 12. And she said, if I'm going to marry anybody, I'm going to marry him. And of course she did eventually. So he was a lot older than her. She's a famous actress in her own right, Saira Banu. And Dilip Kumar was born before partition in what is now Pakistan, Peshawar. and he came to Bombay to make it into films. And I think initially started sort of working as a script writer and various odd jobs that he did. But then he got into films, and I think he was very lucky because, as you picked up quite rightly, he developed this sense of acting, which was very sort of getting into the character, emoting quite nicely, where you know, we don't know but what is going on in his mind, but we do know because he emotes it in such a way that we get the sense that he's actually feeling something. And this is what is then referred to later on by Hollywood as method acting. And so he was one of the first people to actually do method acting before Brando did, because Brando came much later in the late 40s, whereas Dilip Kumar started in the early 40s. So he kind of developed that method acting school of acting. And you can see that in all his performances. They're very sedate, but they're very sort of, it shows that anguish inside him, and the torment, and the, you know, all the feelings that people can't really express through their facial expressions or vocally, but he does it in such a way without any words or any dialogue or anything whatsoever. So the man was absolutely brilliant, and because of his this kind of acting that he's done, he's become an icon, and he's been admired and imitated by so many actors throughout the generations, from Amitabh Bachchan to Shah Rukh Khan to even the newer generation like Ranveer Singh and Ranbir Kapoor. So everybody admires him because of that, and he is a true legend. So as you said quite rightly, it's been in all the news. We've had them on the BBC. We've had you know, Sky News. Lots of big mentions. And no doubt in next year's Oscars, he will be remembered in the in memoriam section as well, because he is considered as one of the greatest, greatest actors in the world. And, you know, he lived at the ripe old age of 98. And just to give you a little bit of background on his the popularity, as you know, the Filmfare Awards are the equivalent of the Oscars in Hollywood. And so when the Filmfare Awards were first inaugurated in 1954, he was the first recipient of Best Actor. And not only that, but he won it 4 times in succession. And then the 5th year, fun enough, he got nominated for Madhumati, but he didn't win. So there's the irony. But I'll come to, there's more to that story than about the Filmfare Awards. But yeah, it just shows his popularity, because he's also one of the most he's won the most Filmfare Awards for Best Actor. That's the record that he holds as well. I think it's a total of about 9.
Wow.
So he's got 9 Best Actor awards. So yeah, he's really admired, really looked up to. People imitate his style of acting. They try, and I think, you know, people even sort of look like him now, because I mean, if you look at Shah Rukh and you think, yeah, I can see Dilip Kumar in him. Even Amitabh Bachchan, I think the hairstyle. So, you know, you can see certain sort of mannerisms that they sort of cultivate, and you can see they've either, I don't think they copy him, but they actually take a part of it and make it their own. So yeah, he was a great influence, and it still is in Bollywood. And I think it's a big loss to for Bollywood and Indian cinema in general, because you know, he was such an influence and such a great actor.
I
So
definitely watching this could see that Shah Rukh Khan, who, if you don't know, that's what started me watching Indian film, was my love of Shah Rukh Khan, and I've seen 70 of his films, and I was just like, okay, the way that Shah Rukh parted his hair, the way that he acts on screen, like you say, it's not really an imitation, but I can tell that it's so deeply influenced, so much an homage to what Dilip Kumar was doing on screen in these roles. And, you know, immediately when I saw the ending of this film, I'm like, Om Shanti Om. It just, you know, I mean, that I'm seeing that, you know, this reincarnation story with the flashback to a prior life, you know, has been repeated in so many films that I've seen. I don't know if this is the very first one to do
yes.
it. Oh, it was. Yeah. And
Well,
so,
I wanted to mention that because it was one of the first ones that, well, it might have been done slightly different, but it was the first mega super duper hit that did this theme of reincarnation. So it was so popular because of that. And then we've had so many films, a slew of films that you've seen that sort of did that. But like you said, Om Shanti Om, similar, but the last ending scene is almost a complete, if you not a copy, but also an homage to this film. So I think because this film was such a huge hit and left such an impact on the Indian cinema audiences because of this reincarnation theory. Because obviously, as you know, Indians believe in reincarnation. So it was a great love story told in a really different kind of way that nobody had ever told a story like this before, and also, you know, had musical numbers which are even sung today to this day, which, you know, the whole thing. And the first thing I would like to mention about this film is that I don't know if you know, but Bimal Roy, who's again one of the prolific directors in Indian cinema, especially Hindi cinema, he actually decided, no, I'm not going to do a studio version of this. He actually went outside on location and shot the whole film in location, which was a first for any Indian film at that time.
Oh,
so
really?
all
Wow.
the scenery that you saw of the waterfalls and the smoke and everything rising, all the natural scenes were all done as an outdoor shoot. But he did have some problems because nobody had ever tried that before. So when he got the footage back, it was all very blurred. So what they had to do was they had to reshoot it, or they had to recreate certain parts of it in some other locations or inside the studio. So there was minimal sort of studio shooting going on there. But he actually ran into financial difficulties during the making of this film. So what happened was, in those days, Dilip Kumar was a big name, and he intervened and showed the distributors what they'd shot so far, and he got them to actually invest more money. So this film finally got made, and that was great. Now, Bimal Roy and Dilip Kumar, the coming of the two together was just brilliant, because Bimal Roy has been a director who has this natural approach, realistic approach to filmmaking. So his films are very grounded and have this sort of realistic feeling. Dilip Kumar's performances has exactly the same thing. So bring the two together and you'll see that you didn't have a masala kind of film. You had a much more grounded, realistic kind of performances, and the film as well. You know, when you see sort of like the odd scene of where, you know, she's been chased by the villain, and then she comes back home, and you see this one scene with her and her father who's smoking a pipe, and she sits there, not a word said, but she just looks at the father. That scene was completely unnecessary, but it was that realistic feeling that, you know, she's worried, like, should she mention it to her father? But we didn't, as an audience, didn't need to know that. It was a very brief scene, but it brings in that realistic sort of realism into that film. So those are the kind of little touches that Bimal Roy used to put in there. And of course, Bimal Roy has worked with Dilip Kumar, who did the original Devdas, which Shah Rukh eventually remade, but he'd done that film before this film. And then, of course, he did Madhumati. And then, of course, just straight back to back, he did Yehudi, which is a completely different film. And it probably blew your mind as well.
Totally did.
Because it was a Roman Jewish sandal drama done by Indians, which is completely unheard of. But again, that was a big mega hit. And again, all the songs are classic, sung to this day as well. So yeah, just a little bit of background on the film Madhumati and how it came about. But like you said, you picked up on the essential part of things where it looked beautiful, because it was the first time it was done all as an outdoor shoot, which hadn't been tried before in Indian cinema. And it worked beautifully.
I mean, I have to hand it also to the cinematographer of just, you know, like the scene when he first hears her, and then he's just seeing her through the mist, you know, and the mountains. And oh my gosh, it's just so, I mean, we're watching this all in black and white, but still it has so much visual power.
Yeah.
You know, just it's really just setting the mood, and the way the lighting was done in the creepy haunted house when they arrived in the dark and stormy nights, you know, and just the atmosphere of it. There's nothing like black and white for, you know, kind of creepy, kind of scenes, you know. But I mean, we've talked a lot about the Kumar, but Vyjayanthimala, like, the way she played this part, one of the things that I noticed, she's supposed to be this simple girl from the living in the mountains, and the way that she walked, she didn't walk, she pranced. She just, it
Yeah.
was almost like she was dancing and running. And I love the scene where she's like, "Come to my house," and she's like, "Yeah, we're just gonna go down this huge mountain," and she grabs Dilip Kumar's hand, and they're, he's just being dragged behind, and of course they touch because he's
Yeah.
stumbling because he can't keep up with
Yeah.
her amazing pace. But just the way that she used physical movement to
Yeah.
tell us about her character, the way she would peek around a tree or snatch a drawing that he
Yeah.
had made or whatever. I just loved everything about it. And seeing these two films back to back, I guess it was very much of a style to do these pin curls
Oh yes.
along the face. It reminded me of like Betty Boop, but
Yeah.
it looked so amazing on her.
Yeah.
She's just luminously beautiful. But so she was the one that did win Best Actress. But was it for this film, or you said she had 5 different films or something that year? I can't remember if she won for this one.
Well, she so just a recap on the awards very quickly. This film actually won. I think it was 8 awards. No, 9 awards in total. It was nominated for about 11. And the weird thing was, it won everything except for Best Actor and Best Actress and Best Writer, which were the 3 main categories that you would have thought, because the story was brilliant, the acting by the 2 leads were brilliant, and it won everything except these 3 awards. Now, that record was stood for about 37 years. For the Indian film to have won the most Filmfare awards, and it was finally broken by your favorite film, which was DDLJ.
A little independent film called DDLJ.
DDLJ, yeah,
Yeah.
which won 10 awards, Filmfare awards. So yeah, you can see just how great this film was, because it was appreciated even at the sort of award level in the days when awards actually mattered, as we all know.
Yeah.
But just going back to Vyjayanthimala, she is a super duper actress. But because she's also a trained and classically trained dancer, her movements in any film, even just the slight wave of a hand, it's almost like a dance movement. And I was going to mention the curls, because in those days, that was a style where they had these kiss curls. And you'll have noticed that in the other film that you watched as well. And a lot of films that you see of that period, you'll find these kiss curls. So when I was watching it, I said, I bet you Melanie will. I wonder if she'll pick it up or not. And you did. So great. Kudos to you. Vyjayanthimala, as you know, I mean, she was the central character, because the film's name is actually based on her character name, Madhumati. Similarly, Om Shanti Om was based on the female character's name, Shanti. So there's a little bit of a comparison. But she was the center of the whole story. But you didn't feel like anybody outshone anybody else. I mean, Dilip Kumar had an equal part to play and a different part. And you could see his frustration in the latter half, where he's sort of, the mental state he was in, where he'd lost her and he was trying to find her. And I mean, that just shows the range of his acting abilities, where he's conveying things without dialogue, the inner turmoil that he's going through. And, we as an audience can just see, we can feel with him, we can go on that ride and we can see his torture. And, that was the beauty of the man, that, he actually conveyed all of that. So he is truly, truly a great actor. But Vyjayanthimala,
he was playing this double role.
yeah.
And so when he sees her again and she looks just the same, and she's playing this very,
Modern.
regal, aristocratic, just a very different, everything about the way she's holding her body, the way she's speaking,
Yeah.
everything is different. And,
Yes.
So I really, highlighted that, just like how how she could play such 2 different parts in the same film, double role. I just was so taken with her performance. It was, I mean, but like you said, no one completely outshone anybody else. And I also felt like most of the supporting characters also were quite strong. Like the Giant, I think, was the name of the actor that plays her father. I thought he was awesome. And then, you know, I mean, the mustache curling evil, evil
Yeah,
King. But it just, I just felt like it's it's just such an amazing film, and I'm so glad that you urged me to see it. I've had other people, I've had a certain fan who's kept emailing me and asking me to watch this film, and this was the week to finally do it, to really honor
yeah,
Dilip Kumar and his amazing legacy with one of his most impactful films. And I could just see, having watched this and having seen so many other films, I can just see the influence in the same way that you can see, like, the train scene in DDLJ. You
yeah,
see it as an influence in so many other films, or it's given homage in a small way, even in a comedic way or whatever, in so many films, and it's just a little nod. And that's the same thing here, where um just the reincarnation plot, just the way that final scene was. I just, as soon as it was revealed that she's actually was the ghost, I'm like, oh, Shanti, like,
yeah.
I'm just like, I was just like, this is exactly the same. And I know that Farrakhan was playing homage to so many different films
Yeah,
from Shanti Om, but obviously she also had a great love
yeah,
for this film to recreate so much of the same storyline. I mean,
yeah,
obviously with its own tweaks and twists and whatever, but um, to recreate the final scene almost exactly the same
yeah.
way is such an homage to this great film. So that was just it was just one of those fun things for me. I'm always appreciative when I can catch the illusions
Yeah.
from life that I've
Well,
seen enough, you know?
this is what I admire about you, because you've sort of grown so much with Indian cinema that you can now pick up the differences or the similarities, or you can start identifying things, whereas most people who are still fairly new to Indian cinema cannot make the connections as such. Whereas you, I mean, I find that you're incredible now, because your knowledge is so great that you can actually just now say, ah, yes, I saw that scene, or that's an homage, or this is where that originated from. So that is absolutely brilliant. In terms of the Om Shanti Om scene, as we said, it was almost practically frame for frame kind of thing. In terms of the storytelling, but what I was amazed by, and I think we didn't know how originally Vyjayanthimala died, because they kept it a suspense, and we thought,
Yep.
is she alive? Is she dead?
Right.
And then when you see the second Vyjayanthimala come, you think, oh, maybe that's her. No, it's not. No, we know it's not her. So what's happened to her? And we kept guessing, and we kind of knew she was dead, but we just didn't know why or how.
Right.
We kind of guessed at it, but
I mean, because in your
eventually,
mind, you can
yeah,
imagine all of these horrible things that the
exactly,
king could have done to her. Like, yeah, it could have been
exactly.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. So we were sort of left wondering. So, the first half, or the first three quarters, was almost like a love story building gradually. And, you're getting swept up with beautiful songs and, all these sort of different things. And then suddenly the last quarter, angst and, sorrow and suspense and all sorts of things going on. And, her father, who played by Jen, just a quick trivia, is actually the father of Amjad Khan, who plays the villain in Sholay, and subsequently was the biggest villain in the 80s and 90s Bollywood. And also the villain that was played here was called Pran, and he always played the villain in all these ancient films. So Pran was the typical villain. Eventually, Pran became a character actor, and he suddenly became very, very likable in the late sort of 60s onwards. So Pran just suddenly did a 360, and he sort of suddenly became this well-loved actor, whereas before people used to boo and hiss when he came on screen. So yeah, Bollywood kind of sort of repeats itself every now and then. It turns a full circle and it comes back. And just wanted to sort of say that, how you mentioned that Bollywood actors, you can see they either slightly imitate him or pay homage to him or whatever. It's the same thing if you think about it in Hollywood, where Marlon Brando is held as a beacon of acting, and then you've got people like De Niro and Pacino who kind of start to emulate that, but in their own way.
Right.
You know, and they do the acting. It's similar in Bollywood as well. So it's not a direct copy of what Dilip Kumar did, but it's inspiration that they take and the techniques they take from him. So, you know, there is parallel between Hollywood and Bollywood as well in that respect. But just going back to the songs, now, did you ever imagine there would be a song about a scorpion?
I did not. I did not. A little spicy.
Wasn't it brilliant? It was all about a scorpion climbing on her body, calling a sort of witch doctor, trying to get it off. Nothing would get the scorpion off, and then her lover comes and the scorpion runs away. But it was a beautiful, beautiful song, and it was one of the biggest hits of that time from that film. In fact, all the songs were brilliantly, they were big hits and brilliant, but that one song was just a huge hit because it was such a folksy number, and then it was done as a reprise when the second Vyjayanthimala comes along and does it on stage. Right, and that's when he clicks. He said, right, she could play the part of the original Madhumati and, you know, trap Pran into sort of confessing his deeds. So, yeah, that song kind of held that relevance. And I sort of earmarked it in my head saying, yeah, I've got to mention that because, you know, I don't know what Melanie thought about a song all about a scorpion.
Oh, no, I love that. But of course, my favorite song was the Pardesi song.
Of course.
Which of course carries through and is so haunting. And oh gosh, yeah. That was my, I mean, there's so many beautiful songs.
Yeah.
That's the thing. These older movies have even more songs than we have in modern Hindi films. But that was the standout song for me, that I just felt like the melody and everything about it was so haunting and beautiful. Looking this film up, I was amazed to see that this was actually the singer Lata's first film. And so I believe so, you know, her career, which is again like to span so many decades, that's amazing, because I think her voice especially conveys kind of that, I don't know, ethereal quality, you know, and so of the film and the themes and everything. And so I just thought it smashed perfectly. And you just, you know, think about all the great people, all the cinematographer, the writer, like you said, everyone at the top of their game, all of these people coming together to make such an amazing film.
I'm just going to correct you very quickly that this wasn't Lata's first film. Okay. No, Lata sang quite a few years before that, so she'd come into. But I understand what you say, that, you know, she has that ethereal quality to her voice anyway, and when she first started, she used to mimic the older singers, which had a very deep voice, and then she sort of found her own voice, which was this very sort of almost like a Cinderella, a Snow White kind of voice, a Disney kind of voice, the falsetto and the, you know, the pure quality. But as you said rightly, I mean, I knew that that song Pardesi would be your favorite because obviously that's the name of your channel. And I said, right, what a coincidence that we're watching something, and it went throughout the whole film. So of course you're going to be reminded of that again and again and again, because it just, you know, had this sort of reprise every now and then. Even especially towards the end. I mean, the whole film, it just went through. In fact, when it first, when we didn't even meet a character and Dilip Kumar comes into the village, we just hear a couple of lines of it, and then you hear a couple of lines again. You never hear the full song, and then finally you hear the full song, and then you hear the reprise again and again and again. So I like the way it started just by giving you little snippets of it, you know, teasing you with it. And one of the songs, and I don't know, my mind's gone completely blank, but the song Pardesi, the musical interlude in that every now and then was then taken and had another tune made for another song in Madhumati. So I'm trying to think. So Aarey Pardesi, Dil Mora Ke Hai Ke. So that was the other song that they made from the melody from that song. So that I could see it. I mean, I hadn't noticed it at first, but when I heard the melody, I said, hang on, that's another song from this film. And so that's what they've done. They've taken that out and they put it in as another song. And in fact, there were about 11 songs made for this film. But the actual, in the film, if you count it as a full picturized song, there were only about 7 or 8, I think.
Okay.
But if because the full album had about 11 songs, because if you go back to when Dilip Kumar burst into Pran's house when he finds out that he's done away with her or something,
Right.
and he has a dancing girl, and you
Right.
hear a couple of lines of something, that was a full song on the album. But if
Okay.
so there were a couple of other songs like that which were, didn't make the cut or whatever, but there were 11 songs in total, I think, originally, but only a few sort of made it to the final cut. But all the songs, as I said, were brilliant. And this music director was called Salil Chowdhury, whose biggest hit was probably this film. And this film was actually awarded later on as the musical album of an era or something like that. So, even the music stands the test of time and has won awards much later after the actual film was released, decades later. And of course, guess who won the Best Female Song Award, and for which song? It was Lata Mangeshkar for Pardesi, yes. So she won the Filmfare Award for that song, your favorite song. And so, of course, quite rightly. So yeah, it's all cosmic.
Maybe what I read was not that this was her first film, but maybe this was her first film where Filmfare win for a song. Maybe that's what it was.
No, no, she's won before as well.
All right.
I tell you. Okay, if you're going to go on to the first, right? The first in this case is you having watched Dilip Kumar for the first time, well, second time, but developing a crush for the first time.
I know. I was like, I was tweeting out and sending out on my Instagram. I'm just like, be still my heart, because all of these decades later, he's got that smolder. I'm telling you. He has that X factor.
Yeah.
It's the way he looks at the heroine. It's the way that you see the emotions on his face. But obviously this is of an era where they're not doing big kisses on screen. You have all the almost kisses, but he just had, in the same way that Shahrukh can do scenes where there's not kissing, and yet they have a sensuality to them. They have sexiness to them. Because of the way he is so intense about the heroine, and it just, like I said, it's a smolder. He's got it.
He was a very good-looking man, and of course, as you said, he had this smolder and these very expressive eyes. And here's a little fun fact, if you didn't know this, but he could have been Bollywood's very first international star, because he was actually offered the role by David Lean in his film for Lawrence of Arabia, right?
Wow.
And the only reason Dilip Kumar turned it down was because he wanted to play Lawrence of Arabia. And eventually the part went to none other than Omar Sharif, who then became a legend. So that could have been Dilip Kumar. That could have been Dilip Kumar. He could have been on the international stage, but only because...
of course, Omar Sharif is a singular talent himself.
Yeah.
But that is mind-boggling to think about, because he would have killed it. He would have been an international sensation.
Yeah.
He had taken
their careers would have gone differently, obviously, because, Omar Sharif, they went on to do Dr. Zhivago and various other films, Funny Girl and stuff like that, whereas Dilip Kumar might have had some other films. But what I mean is that, it brought somebody like Omar Sharif to the world as a big explosion, and I think Dilip Kumar would have had the same impact. Nobody had. There were one or two other people from the Indian cinema who'd done small parts in Hollywood films or Western films, but nobody of that magnitude, because that role was such a juicy role that he could have had that role. Except he wanted to play Lawrence of Arabia. So I thought, oh, okay. But yeah, he hasn't done bad, because, he's had quite a good career in India. All his films are well worth watching. Minus one or two films. This man has done everything from romance to swashbuckling, comedy, and of course, he's known as a tragedy king because he had, he had this angst, and in most of his films, he ends up dying. I mean, obviously, Devdas and stuff like that. So yeah, he was known as the tragedy king, and of course, in that era, there were three big stars. There was Dilip Kumar, Raj Kapoor, and Dev Anand. Now, these three were the most bankable and most talented actors, and these were the leading heroes of that time and era. And of course, years and decades later, we had something similar with the Khans. We had Shah Rukh, Salman, and Amir.
Right.
So it's almost history repeating itself. So nobody could touch those three before, and it was decades before we got another a sort of trio of people, of actors who actually sort of ruled the roost, if you like. So in that era, when you had these, they all had their own individual qualities. You had Dilip Kumar as the tragedy king, you had Raj Kapoor as the clown, emotional clown, and then you had Dev Anand, who was the bad boy who was just verging on the grey line. So yeah, they all had their own individual styles, and nobody sort of traded on their personalities or just their characteristics like some of these modern actors do. Their persona. I mean, these were all actors, and they could act a part. They could get their teeth into it. So yeah, I mean, as they say quite rightly, old is gold, and a lot is to be learned from them, and a lot has been learned from them. And I think there are still generations to come who will learn from Dilip Kumar, the great acting that he had, because there are classes being taught around the world, and even if they're not, people have grown up watching this man, and they've picked it up, and they said, right, this is the way to emote, or this is the way to say something. He doesn't shout his dialogues as such. He internalizes everything and then brings it out slowly. So I mean, there are lots and lots of films that I could recommend to you.
Well, I think about Mughal Azam. He was acting opposite Raj Kapoor's father,
Yeah,
who definitely had that kind of, I mean, it fit the role of the king father, but he had that more showy theater,
yeah,
theater kind of style
yeah,
to his acting, which again fit the role. But that was a contrast in styles of acting, because Dilip Kumar, like you say, is more natural, more organic
yeah,
feeling, more method. And you know, I think modern audiences might see things as somewhat mannered or whatever, but I just see, it's not someone of that old timey theater overacting kind of style. He knows
yeah,
how to act for the camera for a film.
yeah.
He has this relationship with the camera and just draws you in, and it's masterful. And
Mm,
he is he's up there with the greats of any of the, like, I mean, we've mentioned Marlon Brando and some of these other Hollywood greats. I mean, he's definitely in that pantheon of the greatest of the
mm,
great,
yeah.
and I'm just so happy that yeah, I mean, sorry that it took me so long, but I just had a wonderful weekend of really celebrating his life by watching some of his greatest work, and just knowing this is a man who left a legacy of so many films that I'll be able to discover in the future. And he's left that for all of us, to um, such a library of films that, are still treasured today, all of these decades.
Yeah.
There's so many films that have come and gone and have been forgotten, but his films will be remembered.
Well,
Uh,
I'll be only too glad to recommend a list of films that you should watch of his. So I think I've already done that to some degree,
but
but I'm
I
glad
mean,
that we watched.
yeah, I mean, the writing of this film too, I just felt like it was such a compelling story. I mean, I didn't necessarily, now that I've seen other reincarnation stories, I kind of
Yeah,
knew somewhat where we were going, right? I didn't
yeah,
know that final scene was going to happen. Because, like you said,
yeah,
you have this tension of, is she trapped in the basement, or like, is she dead? Like, you
yeah,
really are not sure what happened
yeah,
to her. and that's brilliant. But now it's familiar, but I'm thinking to myself, what must it have been like for audiences seeing a story like that for the first time
Yeah,
in 1958, and the impact that that must have had. And just a tragedy is right, because what he can't get over her death, and
yeah.
then she draws him to the edge, and and he kills himself, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But I thought to the very first scene that we see him, he's so taken with the scenery that he's
Yeah,
on the edge of a cliff, and
yeah,
someone yells at him, don't don't step forward, go back. And he's
yeah.
so, like, just taken with the
That's right.
scenery that he almost steps off the edge of a cliff in one of the very first times that we see him. And I'm like, wow, that is great foreshadowing of what
Well,
is to come.
exactly. That was the setup and the payoff
Yeah,
for later on. That he didn't even notice that he'd stepped off the ledge in the final scene, the balcony, because he was just
right,
drawn to her.
right.
Uh, so he just didn't see that at all, did
Right,
he?
it's not that he was meaning to commit suicide, it's
No.
just that she had vanished from the stairs, and then he's seeing her again, and
Yeah,
he can't live without her, he can't be without her,
yeah,
there's no living without her, so he's just going to her, and, joining her in the heavenly realm, I guess.
exactly. But
So
again, there was another setup and payoff, which was right at the beginning, which they're in the car, him and his doctor friend, and he said, "Oh, sister-in-law, or Bobby, as they call them, his wife.
yeah,
She's on the train, and we're going to be late or whatever." So you don't know who his wife is, and then right at the end, uh, you know. We get this elation as an audience to say, "Oh, they got rebirth again. They were born again, and look, they're together finally in this life as well." And there she is with their little baby son.
yeah,
In the 50s, when people saw that, that was a scene that they remember, because I remember my mum and my dad sort of telling me about that scene. Oh, it was, at the end it was her all along. So they were reunited, reincarnated and reunited, and so that's all they talked about. It's almost like that scene from DDLJ with the train at the end. So this was an iconic scene in those days,
right,
where finally we have a happy ending, because it all fits together, because
right.
we didn't know who his wife was at that time.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
You were hoping in your heart that they had found
yeah,
each other together. But yeah, you were just like, is this tragedy repeating itself again, or something
yeah,
that he's realizing possibly that his true love is out there and it's not who he's with, or I mean, they could have gone so many different ways, but
yeah.
just the satisfaction of the audience of, yes, they are
Yes.
together again. um I just loved the storytelling of this film. I don't know if you could speak, like, was her role in the film, is she supposed to be, um I don't know, I mean, the tension between this king and then the other king, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, her father is supposed to be also like a king. I mean, I felt like there were layers of things there that maybe I didn't completely get, but I just definitely there was a lot of different things, like of how all of
yeah,
his servants uh were scamming the king, you know what I mean?
yes,
And then Dilip Kumar's character comes in and is trying to be honest. And at first the king is like, "Oh, you're someone that I could actually talk to if I wanted to come
yeah,
visit out here and not be in the
yeah,
city." And just, I don't know, there was just sort of layers of things there that I don't know if I completely got, that an Indian audience would immediately resonate with. But I just thought the whole thing was just the conflict of these two,
yeah.
that there was a border that people couldn't
Which
even
is, yeah,
cross,
exactly,
right?
because it said forbidden territory. So yeah, no, we got it as an Indian audience, and I think you just need to watch it again, because there was so much to soak in, because you were probably concentrating on the scenery and all sorts of things. And there was subtext as well on this film, which a lot of people might not get, but it was man sort of destroying the environment with all that
Right.
tree chopping and stuff like
Right.
that. You know, there was that aspect, but it wasn't so great in the 50s. But if you look at it now, it was kind of like a parallel that they were drawing with Vyjayanthimala's character being ravaged at the end in that similar kind of fashion. But yeah, the very briefly, it's there was this animosity because the Bran's character, his father had died. He'd banished him anyway because he was such a no good son. So his father used to rule this, and we get the feeling, well, we were told that he died and he'd left it all to his son. So now he's coming back. But in his father's day, you know, a generation above, Vyjayanthimala's father was also the king of the forest, like, you know, the village folk or whatever. And this was the king of the township, if you like. And they were both on equal footing, but obviously there was some kind of aggravation between the two, and there was a falling out. And you know, as you picked up, I mean, you got the gist of it basically. Yeah. But yeah, it didn't go into too much detail. But yes, so there was an animosity between the two sort of factions, if you like, and that's why they had set up that border, which said, you know, forbidden territory, do not go past this board. I mean, it's highlighted when that little boy is bitten by a snake, and his mother wants to take him to the you know, the village doctor, or you know, and the man's trying to stop her going, and then Dilip Kumar steps in and says, "Let them go," you know. So yeah,
there were so many ways that, you know, there was different levels, but you know, your introduction to Pran's character is that he's just callously galloping through the village, and then there's the little boy that he's just going to trample, and he doesn't even care.
yeah,
And it's Dilip Kumar who grabs the little
yeah,
kid, and then it's his bravery, you know, that makes him a hero amongst all the villagers and everything. But you know, just setting that up. There's so many brilliant ways of setting up characters and clues, and just in a short amount of time, just like one scene, like, okay, like we know that this
yeah.
guy's, he's the big bad,
Bad.
he's evil to the core, you know, and all of that. I just, yeah, there's just so many layers of things there. But so masterful writing and filmmaking on top of such great acting performances. Well, this has been wonderful. I think I'm so glad that you suggested this, and we had such a great. It's been too long since we've had a great conversation
Yeah.
about a film. So really pleased that we could talk about Madhumati today. If you have not watched it, it is on YouTube and with subtitles, and you definitely need to check it out, and honor Dilip Kumar this time of his passing is making everyone look back at all of his favorite films. So definitely check out Sunny's channel, Sunny Starlight. I'll have the link to that in the description. And you can
Thank
find
you.
me on Twitter at Pardesi Review, or you can find me on Twitter at Pardesi YT, on Instagram at Pardesi Reviews. And hit the bell when you subscribe. You'll never miss another trailer reaction or film review.